Going through one of the quizzes from last semester, and just kind of walk you through like my thought process when I took my quizzes and what I did and some little tips and tricks I have for us today. So I am going to go through Professor Knighton's the second version of Quiz 1 that he did from last semester, spring 2017. And so when you get your quiz, this is what it's going to look like. All of them, no matter if it's Professor Knighton or Professor Collier's quiz, will look like this. They'll have the same grading criteria at the top. They'll give you a problem statement. Then they'll kind of outline what your program should like do, what it's going to have, and then they'll show you like what your input and output will look like for the program. So the first thing that I like to do when I did my quizzes last semester was I always like to read through everything very quickly before I start writing anything down, just so I have like a quick idea about what I'm going to be doing. And so the problem statement for this is you are to create a program that tracks the number of students enrolled in a class, provide an average class size, and determine if the class is over the target class size of 50. So not too bad, we can do that, guys. So if you look here, the next big piece of information are there are two classes. So all of your quizzes for quiz 1 should have two classes. You're going to guarantee have to write 2, but no more than that. You won't have to write 3 until quiz 2. So just 2 for today. So what I went ahead and did is over here on my IDE, I have two different files open for my two classes. For y'all, my recommendation is to write one of your classes on one side of the paper and write your other one on the other side. These like programs aren't super long, so that should give you more than enough room to write everything out, even if you have like really big handwriting. I have big handwriting and it wasn't an issue for me. So I suggest that. As well as, I don't know if they've talked to you about pseudocode at all, but pseudocode is kind of, there's some more structured ways to do it with like diagrams and stuff, but it's also kind of just taking notes in your own words to kind of map out what your program's going to look like. I highly recommend doing that as you go through and read through the program for the first time. And I would do that on the back of the instructions page because they say they'll grade anything you write down. Be sure you put like a big X through it and like write like do not grade, these are my notes, because then they won't grade it. But if you don't do that, they will. So it's totally okay to take notes, but be sure you like make like it really obvious that those are notes and not like your actual code for the quiz. All right, so let's go ahead and look at class 1. So this class has no attributes. Easy enough, we don't have to do anything there. And it says this class will be called MIS 3370 Quiz 1A Fall 2018. So I'm going to copy that because I will type it in wrong otherwise. So let's go over here. And we know that the class header always has an access modifier. We'll write class, the keyword, and then you'll put the name of your class name, which he gives to you. And let's go ahead and open and close some brackets. On the quiz, I know it's like kind of tough to like write your closing brackets because you don't know where they're going to be. So what I do for my public classes, I put my first opening bracket at the top by the header, and then I put the closing one way all the way at the bottom to make sure I give myself enough room to write. And if I end up like having like more room than I need, like I can erase and move that bracket up later if there's like big gaps. But at the start, it's really good to do that to make sure that you're not missing any closing brackets in your quiz, but also still giving yourself enough room to do work. So this is, we know we're going to start a class like this. Let's go back and look at what else it says. So we know it says this class has only 2 methods in addition to the main method. So that means this class 1 right here that we're creating is going to have 3 methods total. It's going to have your main method and 2 additional ones that you're going to write that they'll tell you about. So we know that when programs run, what they do is they look for the main method first. That's like the first thing they do, so they know where to start, and then they start running all the code beneath that. So so this class is going to do the bulk of the work because it's going to have the instructions. And this class, the way these like quizzes are formatted, is this is going to be the class that you're going to end up creating objects of and other methods from, and you're going to use the methods from this future class will write, and you're going to use them in the main of the MIS 3370 class that we're creating here. So let's see, it says the first of these additional methods receives as a parameter an object of type course. Using the object, it will display the output as shown below, listing the class, professor, and class size. So this little block of code here is what the output should look like when you call this method here that we will write in a second. The second of these additional methods will display these two output lines. Hint, you will need to get the appropriate values from the objects created and then perform the necessary calculations. So again, this is the output that we should get when we call this second method. And like you said, they give you a big hint. This is going to be the method that requires you to use like the objects that we'll create here in a second. One thing I want to point out right now here is it says these additional methods should not have public access. On his solution sheet, if you see, both of them do have public access, even though it says they shouldn't have it, so this should be marked private. I wasn't sure which one to follow, so I'm deciding to follow the answer sheet, and we're going to ignore this. I'm actually going to draw like a big line through this so that no one hopefully gets confused. But on the quiz, if it says should not have public access, make them private, follow the instructions on the quiz. But because I have the answer here, I'm going to follow the answer because I want what I teach y'all to be closest to what he uses to grade, so that y'all hopefully don't have any unnecessary points off or anything. Okay, so then moving on, we've covered the additional two methods you're going to write in this class. Let's look at the main. So this is going to tell us the main does the following in the order. So it instantiates a new object of the class course. So one thing I want to point out, there's a bunch of like little hints that he'll give throughout that'll give you information later. See how it says new object of the class course? This right here, without even looking at the instructions down here, I can tell you that the second like class that we're going to creating is going to be called course. So I'm going to go ahead and go over here, and we're going to go ahead and start this one as well. So public class course is what it's called, and we're going to open and close those brackets as well. So instantiate a new object of the class course. Instantiate a second object of the class course. Okay, so in the main, the first two things we're going to do is be creating two objects from the class course. No big deal. Call the first of the additional methods referenced above, passing the object name of the first object. So after we create the two objects, we're then going to call this method that we will create in the near future, and we're going to give it the name from this first object we made. And we're going to do the same thing for the second object. So for both of these objects we create, we're going to call this method for both of them and pass that name in, and then call the second of the additional methods, and then we're just going to call this one. No big deal. So that is everything we're going to do in class 1. Because this one has the main in it, we're going to write it second. My huge recommendation to you is that you figure out which class has the main and you write the other one first. Because remember, the main is just the list of like instructions. It's bringing everything we're writing together. So if you're saying like call these methods and instantiate an object, like, okay, we can do that, but you haven't written your constructor, you haven't written those methods yet, so you won't know how to write the main. It'll make it a lot harder. If you've written all of these other pieces first and then you go back and write the main, then it becomes so much easier because you're just like quickly filling in the blanks. So write the main last. My recommendation, the order is write the class first that doesn't have the main, write any additional methods for the class that does have the main, then write the main. So just write the main last. You can go to that last. So let's go ahead and look at class 2 to see what it does real quick. So it says this class is called course and has only the following 5 attributes. So we already have the course name class, which is great here. Let me go ahead and save this onto my computer. So just put it on desktop, course.java, perfect, save. Okay, so we're all set there. And it has 5 attributes. So if we remember correctly, our attributes go immediately under our class name because they are part of attributes, or like I think of them like big variables. They're variables that belong to the entire class itself. So they're not just part of like just the main or just one method. They're part of this whole class here. So we're going to go ahead and write those first. It's real obvious. He tells us exactly what they are. And we also remember, I know this is Cooper saying, but I know Professor Collier teaches this. I don't know if Professor Knighton teaches this, but I find it really handy. Remember, all attributes private all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in just for y'all here. All attributes private all the time. Super, super, super important. They will take points off for that, and I don't want y'all to lose silly points. So the first thing is we're going to say private. And the first thing they want is the section name, so it's string section name. There we go. Let me fix my typos. Let's go see. What is the second thing? So course name. Okay, then we want the professor. So we're going to say private again, string, and we go section professor. Private again, because we know all attributes are private. The third one is the number of students enrolled. So that will be, let's see, we'll do int students enrolled. They are very, very, very particular about using the proper data types for like the size. So you're not if something's going to be really, really small, if it's going to be like 100 or less, then you'll use byte, because byte only goes up to 127, I think, off the top of my head. So we don't want to be using something like an int that's way bigger. On this one, Professor Knighton doesn't give you any like specifics to say like this will never be bigger than this number, this will never be bigger than this number. So on his, I would just use int. As far as I can tell, that's all he wants you to do. I think he's okay with you using int for all numbers. But for Professor Collier's, she will be very specific to say this class will be no larger than this number. So you need to be able to make sure you know what proper data type to use, because they will take off points. It won't be much, it may be like half a point or just 1 point, but they will take them off. And I know that her quizzes are like that, and Cooper's, if you're watching this a later semester than this one, if you're taking Professor Cooper, his are like that too. So be very careful. But on Knighton's, we're okay using int. And then total number of students enrolled. Oh, already have that one. 404. Hold on. 1, 2, 3. Number of students enrolled. Oh, total number of students enrolled. So we'll do private. We can do int again. Actually, int, and then total students enrolled. And this one, we're going to set to 0. And we're going to do something special with this one too. We're going to make this static. And let's talk about that for just 1 second, why we're making this attribute static. And that is because if we're to create an object of the course, each course is going to have a section name and a section professor and students enrolled. And those numbers are going to be different for every course. But the total students enrolled needs to be one number that does not change. It's going to be the same for each of them, for like each class. So because of that, we're making it static, because we don't want to create a different total each time we create a new course. We want it to be one single number that we can track overall to know the total number of students enrolled. That's also why we're setting this one to 0 and not the others. And then I'm going to move on to the last attribute, which is total number of courses created. So private int sections created equals 0. And just like this one above, we're going to set it to 0. And this one is also going to be static for the same reason. We want one running tally number, not like a bunch of different numbers that are going to be off. We want just one number that we can keep track of how many sections we have created. And that's why this is static. All right, we have officially completed the first section of class 2. So this whole chunk of code you are now done with. That's super easy. Look how quickly we got through that. They told you everything you need to know here for that. So it says this class is only the following one constructor method. So that's super awesome. That makes that real easy. So let's go ahead and start our constructor method. So we know that when writing a constructor that it will have the same name as the class name, excuse me. So we're going to go ahead and write course, and we're going to open and close some parentheses for that. And we're also going to go ahead and open and close some curly braces, because this is where we're going to put all the information for our constructor. So you can also add an optional like access specifier. Professor Knighton has one on his. Professor Collier doesn't have any on hers, I don't believe. I can check that for y'all really quick. Where is it? She does, actually. She uses access modifiers for them. You don't necessarily have to. It'll have the same access as the class does, but it looks like they both want y'all to add them, so be sure you add the access modifier to it. Make it public, because I haven't told you it needs to be private for some reason. It needs to be public so that you can still access it. So now that we're set up to create a constructor, we want to see what this constructor method is going to do. So it says this method will prompt the user for the course name followed by the professor name, followed by the number of students enrolled as shown below. It will then move the values received to the appropriate attributes for the object. It will increment the total number of courses created by 1 each time the constructor is called. Okay, so that is a lot of stuff. We're going to break this down piece by piece. So the first thing this one's going to do is this method will prompt the user for the course name. So let's go ahead and go back here. So we know that if we want to, when they say, this is a keyword, this is one of those little tricks I want to talk about. If it says prompt the user, ask the user, take in input, any of those little keywords means you're going to be using a JOption pane that y'all have learned. And so we also know that if we're using a JOption pane, we need to have an import statement. So we're going to go ahead and go up here and we're going to add the import statement, which is import.javax.swing.JOption pane. There we go, I did that right. I also want to talk about one little thing here. Professor Knighton has a tendency to not write JOption pane for his. He does the asterisk, sorry, should be just the asterisk, versus Professor Collier and Professor Cooper tend to write JOption pane. Both of them are technically correct, but it's up to you whichever you want to use. I'll talk about it a little bit. So what it is, there's no period there. Whoopsies, guys. Anyways, the difference between using JOption pane versus the asterisk. So when you're importing this, you're trying to import the Swing package. And what that is that holds a bunch of different like methods and functions that you can use as the programmer that you don't have to write out. So for example, we know using like the JOption pane, there was a whole lot of coding that went behind building that GUI from the ground up. Now, we don't want to have to like write that out every time. That's a lot of work. So someone went in and said, you know what, I'm going to write the code and I'm going to put it in a package. It's part of like the Swing package. And if people want to use it, all they have to do is import it. So this is the name of that. So when we're saying swing.joption pane, we're importing only the JOption pane functions from the Swing package. Now, if we say swing.asterisk, you're importing all of the functions and methods from the Swing package, every single one that's in there, because there's a lot of them. So they're both correct, and it's totally up to you whether you want to write out the full JOption pane or not. Sorry. Control V. No. JOption pane. Write it out. So that's that little tidbit for you guys. So let's go back and look at what this does. This method will prompt the user for the course name. All right, so we already have our import statement. We're going to be asking the user for the name of the course. Well, we know that that's the section name we talked about up here. So we've already declared section name. So what we're going to do is we're going to say section name equals. We don't have to parse anything because it's a string, and as we remember, JOption pane's always taken strings, so there's no extra work to be done. All we have to do is section name equals, and we will say JOption pane dot show input dialog, not input dialog, and we're going to go ahead and open and close those parentheses real quick, add that semicolon, and then remember the first thing that we always write with the JOption pane is null. This is not super important for a quiz, but just a little refresher. What this word here does is it defaults your JOption pane GUI to the center of the screen. You can put like left, right, and stuff like that, and it'll move it to the left side of the screen or the right side of the screen depending on what you say. But null just puts it in the center, nothing fancy. That's why we always write null. And then we're going to add our phrase. So we want to say enter the section name. Sorry. And you want to know where we get this text here? We get this from down here. Course name. Whoopsie. This should say, no, it does say section name based on his answers. That's tricky. So what you want to do on the quiz is you actually want to follow what it says here. So I'm going to change it to enter the course name so that it matches what he is saying here. That is my mistake. There we go. Let's follow this one instead because this has all the proper stuff. So if where it says course name, we need to go back and make a couple adjustments. Up here where we have section name, it should say course name because it asked for course name here. That is my mistake, you guys. I was looking at the wrong thing. This says professor, so we should also probably say course professor versus section professor since we changed that. And then down here, this shouldn't say sections created, it should be courses created. And section name should be course name. Sorry about that, guys. I got ahead of myself and decided to call it a section instead of a course. Whoopsies. This is why you always read the instructions very, very, very closely, much closer than I was, but we are back on track. We simply just swapped anything that's in section with the word course to make it match up with his instructions. So to prompt the user for the course name, that's perfect. We've already done that. So followed by the professor name. So it is going to now prompt for the professor name. We have course professor up here, so we're going to say course professor equals another J option pane, show input dialog, open and close those brackets, null again because we don't care where it sits on the screen, and let's check what we want it to say. Enter the name of the professor teaching this class. So let's go ahead and write that in. Enter the name of the professor teaching this class. Let's double check that. Professor teaching this class, perfect. And it says followed by the number of students. So the last thing we're going to do is we are going to take in the name, the number of students enrolled in the class. So we have students enrolled already declared up here, so we don't need to write anything else. We can just say students enrolled equals, and our third J option pane, show input dialog. We're using the input dialog instead of the show message dialog because we want to take in information. If we were saying show message dialog, we wouldn't get anything returned. We couldn't take any information. The program would be very confused and not understand what you're trying to do. So be sure you use input dialog for those. And enter the number of students enrolled. We want to make sure we match what we're putting in here exactly, or they'll take off points. Enter the number of students enrolled. There we go. Add that period. Then it says it will then move the values received to the appropriate attributes for the object. So we already did that part. We did it when we asked for the course name. So we did course name here. This is by writing course name here, we're passing this value in here, like in the first place, right up front. And same with this one, we're passing the professor name here and then students enrolled here. But one thing we need to watch out with this last one here is we're asking for the number of students. If we look up here, that's an int. So we can't just pass the information taken in from the J option pane directly to students enrolled because this is going to store an int, but this is trying to pass it a string. And so the program's going to look at you like you're crazy and say, you can't do that. I'm supposed to hold a number. Why are you trying to give me this string of characters? So we need to parse it. And this is a string to an integer, so we're going to parse to an integer. So if you remember how to parse, you just say integer.parse int. And then you'll open it here and be sure to put your quotation marks around the whole thing as you go. Let's go ahead and compile this just to make sure I don't have any errors in my typing. Of course I do. What are we upset about right now? There we go. We're missing an S. That'll be one of them. Integer.parse int. I left out the S. That's another one. I think that might be it. Let's compile it one more time. All right, we are on track now, guys. There are no errors. Let's see what else this constructor is supposed to do. It'll then move the values to the appropriate attributes. Done. It will increment the total number of courses created by 1 each time the constructor is called. So, do you remember how we created this up here and we made it static because we want it to be the same for every single course that we create? We don't want it to change. We only want one of this. We're going to now increment this number. So, the line after this, there's several ways you can do this, and I'm going to go over all the different options. So the one that Professor Knighton has written out on his quizzes, it's to say courses created equals courses created, and you capitalize that, plus 1. So this is your first option, and all this means is currently courses created is set to 0, so the way this would read is 0 plus 1 is going to then be put in courses created, so this is going to then tally up to 1 from 0. The other ways you can write this are, you can also say courses created plus equals 1. That's another option, and it means exactly what we did a second ago, which is this means you'll take the current number stored in courses created and add it with 1, and then you're going to set that number back to courses created. So this is going to set this number up to 1 after this. And the last one, this is the one that I probably like the most, I think it's the easiest, is you just do courses created plus plus. And the plus plus just means that you're going to increment your, this number by 1. So it goes up. But for this one, we'll go back to courses created so y'all can see it easier if those other ways confuse you. Courses created plus 1. Go ahead and compile that. Make sure I typed everything okay. Perfect. And that is the end of this constructor. So far, not too hard. Y'all can do all of that. It's super simple, and we have done this massive chunk of the quiz. Look how much that is. That's like almost half of it. We're almost there. So the last thing this is going to do is this class has 5 additional methods. Each of these methods will return the respective value of each of the attributes of the class. So what that's saying is we need to write 5 methods that when called will return the values stored in each of these attributes. So these are really, really easy. There's a simple formula for all of these. If y'all ever talked about get and set methods, they're methods that are used, like set methods are used to assign like a value into these different attributes. That's basically what we did here, but you did it inside of the constructor instead of writing different methods for each of them. And then get methods are designed to just return whatever is stored in these different attributes to the program. So let's go ahead and start at the top. We're going to write a method that returns the course name. So we're going to say public. It's returning a string, so we're going to say string because we always have to tell the program what it's returning. And we're going to say get course name. Oops, sorry about that. There is no semicolon there. And we're going to go ahead and open and close those parentheses so that the program knows this is a method. This is part of the part of what tells that we're writing a method. Let's go ahead and open and close those curly brackets. And because we're just trying to get the name, we just have to write return and then course name, just the name of the attribute we're trying to return. So these few lines of code we just wrote here, we're going to go through and do that for the other 4 attributes. It's real simple. So the next one is course professor, so we're going to say public. We know course professor is a string, so we're going to say string so that we're returning a string, and we're going to say get course professor. Open and close those parentheses, open and close the brackets, and return. The name of this is course professor. So I'm just going to copy and paste it here. Don't forget that semicolon, very important, or the program will not run right. The next thing we'll say public. We're going to return students enrolled, and this one's an int. So this time, instead of writing string, we're going to write int. So the program knows that it's returning an integer, and we're returning students enrolled. So we'll say get students enrolled. And like all the others, we're going to say return so that the program knows we're returning something. And we're going to return students enrolled. Is there an extra space there? Nope, I think I did okay. And we are how many? We've done 1, 2, 3 now. So we're on 4, so that's also public. And we want to return another integer, so we're going to type int, and then we're returning total students enrolled. So we're going to say get total students enrolled, open and close those parentheses, open and close brackets, return, and I'm going to copy this so I don't type it wrong, students enrolled. Oh gosh, there we go. just zoom out? I think I did. And make it a little bigger. Nah, I don't know what I did, guys. I'm sorry. Public. And this is the very last one. We're returning another integer. So int. We're going to say get. What are we getting? Courses created. Created. Open and close. And the last return statement. Return n courses created. Yay. That's a real simple, guys. Let me see if I can zoom in. I don't know how I managed to zoom out. View toolbars. Nope. Tools. Window. Guys, I really have no clue how I zoomed out in the middle of that. I'm so sorry. Hopefully it's not too small for y'all. Well, I don't know what to tell y'all. Sorry, we're just working with slightly smaller text now. It's a little easier for y'all to see my full code though, so that's nice. But we have written all 5 of those get methods, so let's go ahead and compile. Let's see if I typed everything right. Oh, I did. That's a miracle. So that is these 5 methods. We are done with class 2. You are officially halfway through your quiz at this point, and it's not even that hard. So we can review. The first thing you did was just you created 5 attributes, which is really easy. That's just private, their data type, and the names that you want to give them. And then we created 1 constructor method, which is just public access modifier, the name of the course, and then you add 3 JOption panes, and you assign them to variables. And then you wrote those 5 methods. So let's go ahead and move on to class 1. So let's switch over. This one, our courses class is all done. So let's go over here. So we have MIS 3370 course, or class, excuse me. And let's see. It says 2 methods. We're going to write these 2 methods before the main, because remember I said write the main last. That makes it way easier if you do that. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this first method does. All right, so this first method, it says it receives as a parameter an object of type course. Okay, so it receives that, and it's going to use this object. It will display the output as shown below. So we're going to be printing stuff. This black background with these white letters is how you know you're printing something on this course. So because we want it to display the course name, who it's taught by, and all the information about it, I think a good name for this method will be the same one that Professor Knight has, which is display course. So obviously I know you guys know that this isn't the first way to write a method, but I like to write that part down first. So up here, it says these additional methods should not have public access. Again, because the answers have them as public, we're going to write public just to follow that. And if we notice these, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, guys. This method does not require us to make objects, so it's going to be static as well. We're not returning any information, we're just printing, so it'll be void. And then we have our method name, and let's go ahead and put those parentheses first. Now, this method does say it receives something as parameters. So if you see keywords receives, takes in, even if it doesn't say parameters, if it has receives or takes in, that is your cue that you're going to have some parameters. So it says receives as a parameter an object of type course. So we know it's going to be taking an object of the type of the class course, excuse me. So when we're writing parameters, we always write the data type first. So typically y'all are used to writing int, string, float, something like that. But because it's taking in an object, an instance of the object, or an object of the course class, we need to write course as the data type, because that's what it is. We're taking in something from the class course. And we're taking in we're actually taking in a course. So let's just go ahead and say course in, because that's easy to understand. Let's go ahead and open and close those brackets. And then let's see, what goes inside. So we know it takes it in. It says using this object, it will display the output as shown below, listing the class, professor, and class size. Okay, so if we want to display something, we know we're going to have to use the system.out.print. We're going to do print line. That way, if you print two things, it'll be on a new line. If we don't put print line, if we just say system.out.print, and we called it twice, it would write this, and then the second one would be on the same line. It wouldn't start a new line. So it's very important that you put print line so that we match the formatting of this output here. So system.out.println, I'm going to go ahead and add that semicolon so we don't forget. And then the first thing it wants to print is U of H course, whatever. Well, we didn't anywhere in our input take in the words U of H course, so we are going to add those ourselves. So the first thing we're going to put in our parentheses is U of H course. And the next thing it wants us to print is the name of the course. So we're going to close those quotation marks like we did there. We're going to add a plus sign, and we are going to call the method that gets the course name. So remember these methods over here in this other class that we just wrote, we are going to call this method. And so the way we call that is we just took in a course, and because we want to get the course name for this specific one that we just took in, we are going to say course in dot get course name. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Dot get course name. Command C. We're going to put that there. So now, if we print this now, let's go ahead and compile it to see if I've typed everything right so far. Looks good. So right now, if we were to try to print this statement right now, it would say U of H course plus whatever we take in. So let's go ahead and look at the next thing it wants. Taught by professor. So again, that is nowhere taken in by the program, so we need to add that ourselves. So we're going to say, we're going to add a space, and we are going to write taught by professor. And again, now we get to use information that we've asked from the user, taught by Professor Langknighten. So we're going to do the same thing we did over here. We're going to say course in dot, and we're going to go back to those other methods we created over here, and we're going to say get course professor. Oops, sorry guys. Dot course professor. Print that there. And it's very important that you remember the course in. If you were to say get course professor and just that, the program would not be able to run because it doesn't know which professor you're trying to get. It's going to say, we have, a professor stored, so I need to know which class that you want that professor from. So that's where the course in part is super important, because you're telling it which class you're trying to look for the professor of. So now that we've taken that in, we're going to add another plus sign. And then it looks like the word has is that next little keyword we need to add in. So has, another plus sign. And we took in the number of students, so we're going to say course in dot. And it should be, what do we call it down here? Oh, get students enrolled, because we want to know the number of students in that class. So we're going to copy that. I'm going to paste that in here so that we know. I'm sorry guys, I know it's getting real long on here. So course in dot get students enrolled plus, I believe there's a little bit more, right, and we just have to add the word students enrolled. So the last little bit is going to say students enrolled, and add a period because they want one. So let's go look at the instructions for this method again. So using this object, it will display the output as shown below, listing the class, professor, and class size. So right now our output should look like this if we were to call it. So this method is done. So we can move on to the second method. So let's go ahead and space down, give it room. And let's see, the second of these additional methods will display these two output lines. which is this here. Hint, you will need to get the appropriate values from the objects created and then perform the necessary calculations. All right, guys, so this is going to require a little bit of math from us. So a little tricky, but not too bad. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. All right, so the whole point of this right here is to see the total of the student, like the total number of students enrolled and their averages. So let's go ahead and just call this method, let's say display total, like Professor Knighton has. So let's go back again. This one's public, like the one above. We talked about that. It is also static because we don't have to have the objects. It's void because it's not returning anything. And then the only thing we're missing are these closed parentheses, open and close brackets, and call it a day. So there we go. We have the area, the body, and everything set up for our method. So let's go back and see what this is supposed to say. So the first thing is there are 14 total students enrolled in 2 courses for an average. Okay. So we have the total number of students enrolled, which is real nice. So the first thing we know is those are our words, so we're going to have to add them. So let's go ahead and write the system.out.print, print line again. And let's add the first one. There are. Real easy. And then we're going to move on to a little bit of math. So the first thing we want to do is get the number of students enrolled plus course, because we want to refer to methods from this class, so we have to use the class name first, course dot, and we had a method down here to get total students enrolled. So I'm going to copy this, Command C, there you go, dot, and we're going to paste it there. The next thing it says enrolled 114, so we're going to get that number there. Then we need to add the words total students enrolled in. So we're going to add those words here, total students enrolled in space, plus we want to know how many classes right here. So remember over here we in this line of code what we're doing is we're keeping track of the total number of courses that we've created. So this is when we're going to use that number. So again, because we're calling a method from the other course, we're going to say course dot get courses created. Copy this, the name of this method, paste it there, add, because I know we have more words coming next, to, and then we'll say courses for an average of, and then now is when we're going to have to do a little bit of math. We want to know the average here. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to again call this method that gets us the total number of students enrolled. So we're going to copy this over here. We're going to say we're going to get the number of students enrolled. So it was 114 in the picture, and then we're going to divide it by the number of classes we have, because that's how you think of it, how you get an average. You take the total of everything and divide it by the number of things you are. So if there's like 4 classes, they have 120 students total, and you'll divide that by 4. That'll give you your average. So I'm going to copy that as well. So this looks like a whole lot of words, I know you guys, but all it is doing is right here. This is going to get you the number of students that are in all of the classes, and this is going to get you the number of classes that were created. So it's not nearly as bad as it seems. And now that we can get that number, we just need to say students per class. Easy. That's just adding more words at the end. Students per class. And we are done with that print. Now we need to get this second line. So it says the average is bigger than the target average class size of 50, true. So basically the way this line is going to work is it's going to output true if the class size is bigger than 50, and if it's not bigger than 50, it's going to output false. So we're going to use a Boolean statement for that. So let's go ahead and write our system.out.println, guys. Open and close those. And the first thing we want is words. So we're going to say the average is greater, the average is greater the target average class size of 50. That doesn't make sense, but we will copy that down as he wants. So it says the average is greater the target average class size of 50. Now we need to add that like Boolean expression. So we know that to do that, we're going to use a character that looks similar to this. The reason this isn't going to compare anything is because it's in quotation marks, so the program knows that it is a string. We're going to be using something like this. You can always do like greater than or equal to in the future. There's a lot of stuff you can do for this one. It doesn't have to be that crazy. So all we need to do is find out if the average is bigger than 50. So we can go up here and steal some code we've already written. So remember how we already wrote the expression to find the average? We can go ahead and copy that because we want to say, what is the average? We'll paste that. Is the average bigger than or less than 50? So we're going to add another pair of little parentheses to have this whole expression in it. In this expression, we're going to say, is it bigger than 50? And what this will do is it'll take the average and it'll compare it to 50, and it'll either spit out true or false depending on if it is in fact true or false. So let's go ahead and compile this to see if I have any written mistakes. Cannot be referenced from a static. What are you upset about? Chorus dot kept that off. Aha! That's interesting. It's saying that because this is static, of course, these are non-static methods, and you can't reference a non-static method from a static method. So we are actually going to have to take out this static, I believe. And I'm going to have to do it here as well. It should have the same upset for both. Let's go ahead and compile and see if that fixes that error. All right, non-static method cannot be referenced from a static method. Why are you still upset? Non-static method, get total students enrolled. None of these are static. This isn't static anymore either. Why are you upset? Cannot be referenced from a static context. Let's see. Does private change it? Non-static method, get total students enrolled. Okay, I will take away my static again. Why are you so upset? Nikki said static. Let's see, get total students enrolled. These are non-static. You know what, guys? I missed a very, 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 very important little piece that I did not tell y'all. And I'm so sorry. Let's stop right now and talk about it. So this should be public static. Like he said, I was very confused why that it was not working. So let's go ahead and look at the original error that caught me a little off guard when I didn't know what I did wrong. So it says a non-static method, get total students enrolled, cannot be referred from a static context. That is true. That really confused me. These were static methods. These were non-static ones. I know that you can't refer that. And I wasn't quite sure how that was going to work. thought I was wrong about something, and I wasn't. This, in fact, is true. You can't refer static methods from non-static ones, but there is a way to fix that, and this is very big. When you look over here from this one, we are calling get total students enrolled and get courses created. So over here, remember how these are static numbers, that these are static attributes, because we only want one of them. We don't want a bunch of copies of them every time we create an object of the course class. Well, because of that, their get method should be static as well, because they are dealing with only one, not a bunch of copies. So this, while it compiled fine, for it to run, both of these need to be static. So let's go ahead and compile this over here. Operation complete, we're looking good. Let's compile this and see if that makes it happy now. Why are you upset about that? We'll come back to that in a second. But do you see how those errors about calling a method from a static point are now like gone? That is because we needed to make the methods static as well, not just the attributes. I'm sorry, I totally missed that one. That slipped by me. So be careful, because that is one of those tricky things they'll put on the quiz. Don't worry, it'll just be like a point off or a point or two off or so. It's not like that'll sabotage your entire grade. But that's definitely something to keep an eye out for, because it's really easy to miss. I missed it super easy, and I kind of noticed there was something strange over here with like non-static methods and static ones, but all is well. We figured it out. I missed it. I am so sorry. I apologize, guys. But I'm glad we saw it. I'm glad we got it. So let's see what it's upset about over here. So it's saying bad operand types for binary operator. Did I just type something wrong? Let's find out first. So this should say the average is greater, the target average class size of 50. That's all in quotes, great. And we're going to say plus. Oh, okay. I just need an extra set of parentheses, I believe. Again, watch your parentheses. You got to be really careful with this. Let's compile. Does that take care of it? Yes. So it was just getting confused with the way it was reading because I didn't add enough parentheses. So you need to make sure you have one set of parentheses to solve for the average going on, which is this first set of parentheses here solves for the average. Sorry. That solves for the average, and then you need another set to compare the average as well, because this plus sign here was really confusing the computer. It was trying to add this and this and that, and it just didn't like it. So be sure you have all your extra parentheses. Again, those are little points, but you want all those little points you can get. So we are back on track, guys, and let's see where we are. So we finished that. So one little thing I noticed as well is we're wanting to print the total number of students, but we never wrote a line of code about that. So I believe we missed something. So it says it will increment the total number of courses created by 1 each time the constructor is called. So the instructions, he's actually missing a little piece here, which is interesting. I've never seen a piece left out. I don't know if that was on purpose to see if y'all were able to pick it up or not, but we'll talk about it anyway. So it's not here, but we want to get the total number of students. But nowhere did we write the lines of code that'll do that. We created the place to, we created a space to hold the total number of students, but we didn't do anything with it. So right now it's sitting at 0. So we are actually want to add a line of code. I'm going to add it here in between. That's where he has it on his answer key. And that is, we want to increment this by the total number of students here. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to say total students enrolled equals, and we're going to say, just like this, we're going to say total, students, st, enrolled, plus students enrolled. So let's talk about what's happening here for just a second. So total students enrolled is this. It's sitting at 0 right now. And every time we create a new class, every time we use this constructor, it's going to go through this line of code here, which takes in the number of students enrolled. And what we're doing is we're taking this total, which is currently set to 0, and adding it with the number that we just took in. And that's going to become the new students enrolled total. So that should be okay. Let's go ahead and compile that. Everything's good there too. Again, I'm not really sure why he didn't add that unless I'm staring right at it, followed by the number of students enrolled as shown below. It will then move the values received to the appropriate attributes for the object. It will increment the total number of courses created by 1 each time the constructor calls. I really don't see it there unless you're supposed to just like read this and glean the information from it that you're supposed to add that line of code. Again, I don't know if that was done intentionally to see if I'll pick it up or if that was accidentally left out. But be on the lookout for that. Once you finish writing your code at the end of this, don't just turn it in. Don't just turn it in and say, does it work? Walk through the logic of it. Go to your main and start with the first line of it and say, instantiate a new object of the class course. And you know that you're going to have, when you instantiate an object, you're going to have to go to the constructor. And so go look at your constructor and say, what happens in that? And go walk through it. And when you get to these methods, when you call these methods that are printing things, think, do I have that number? Like, we know putting total students enrolled in when you're writing that, so where is it? Yeah, when you're saying get total students enrolled, think, did you do anything with that, or is that just sitting there at 0? So you got to think about it logically. Step through your code before you turn it in. It helps. You'll probably pick up on some mistakes. I know that was one thing I did that helped a lot. So we have now written all of class 2 and the extra 2 methods from class 1. So that leaves us with the main. That leaves us with the easiest part of this program. So I like to put my main ahead of my additional methods. You can put it below because I know you're writing it in like pencil. That's okay. I've never heard one of them say they want it above or below. Like they want the additional methods below the main. You can ask that in the test. I know they'll kind of answer some like general questions, and that's one that they should be fine answering if you're like worried about it. But I really don't think they are, so I wouldn't be worried about it. But if we're writing the main, we know we need the main method header, so that's the public static void main string args. Let's close that. Let's fix my typos. There should not be one right there. That should be a parenthesis. And then we're going to open and close our brackets. Sorry about my awful typing, guys. But let's go back. So instantiate a new object of the class course. So creating new objects is really easy. There's definitely a formula to them. And that is the first thing you're going to put is the data type. And the data type, when you create an object, is going to be the name of the class that you're coming from. So the name of this class that we're creating objects from is course. So the first thing we're going to write is course. And then the next thing you're going to write is like the made up name that you're going to use to identify this specific course. So we'll just call it course 1 because that's really easy. So now we have our data type and the name for the new object. So these look just like, if we look at it, these look just like variables and attributes. So over here, oops, sorry, wrong one. Over here we see we have like string and then course name. That is just the same as writing course and then course 1. So once we have the data type and the name, we're going to say equals new. This is just one of those Java like keywords that you have to have so that it knows you're creating a new object. And then we're going to call the this method right here. It's a constructor, but it still works just like a method. So we're going to copy it and we're going to print that there. And you have now created a new object. Simple as that. And now instantiate a second object of the class course. So the cool thing is if you can do this one line of code, you can copy it and you can paste it because it's going to be the same. The only thing you need to change is you need to give it a new unique name. So we're going to call this course 2 so that we know the difference between them. But so far it is that simple. Next, it says call the first of the additional methods referenced above, passing the object name of the first object. Okay, so this is saying we want to call this first method that we made. And when we call that, we're going to give it this name that we just took in when we instantiated the object. So the way we type that is we're going to say, we called it display course, so I'm going to copy this, display course. and it said it's going to take in the name from up here. So we called it course 1. So we're going to write course 1 because it wants the name of the new object. So that one's really easy. And then it says the next thing is called a first additional method, but pass it the name of the second object. So again, easy. We get to copy this. So copy that, space down, and we just need to say course 2 instead of course 1. Now we've made it this far, and we only have one thing left to do. See how easy it is to write the main method after you've written everything else? It's just like plugging in little things. So call the second of the additional methods, so we're going to call this one. And this one, we don't have to pass it any information. See how there's nothing in these parentheses? We don't have to pass it anything. Up here, we were passing course 1 because it's expecting the name of a new object, but this one expects nothing. So all we have to do is type display total, and that's it. Easy as that. Let's go ahead and compile this. Let's see, no errors there. Let's double check this one again and compile this. Do I have any errors? And we have now done everything. We started here, we wrote our 5 attributes. We wrote the constructor method. We wrote all 5 of those get methods down here. We wrote these 2 additional methods, and we noticed some tricky things in there that were hidden and some easy mistakes to make, even if you've done this stuff before like me. It's easy to trip up there. And then we wrote the main. So let's go ahead and see what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and do this side by side so I can type in the proper input that they're using. And let's go to the page with the main and let's run it. Okay, so it wants our course name, so we're going to MIS 3370. Knighton, Professor Knighton's teaching the class. And it has, how many students does it have? It has 66 students. Okay, and it wants us to enter another course name, which is MIS 4374. Knighton also teaches that one, but this one has only 48 students in it. So let's see. And does this output look like this stuff up here? So U of H course MIS 3370, taught by Professor Knighton, has 66 students enrolled. And MIS course MIS 4374, taught by Professor Knighton, has 48 students enrolled. So we're doing great so far, guys. There are 114 total students enrolled in 2 courses for an average of 57 students per class. And let's see, the average is greater the target average class size of 50. So it's going to print true. So our program worked, guys. There's a few little spacing mistakes that I made, and that's on me. If we want to go back and fix those, we can. Let's see where they are. That comes from not adding spaces before and after the quotation marks. I believe that's that one. That should fix all of them. Those aren't important. But there you go. That is the best way, I think, to approach these quizzes. Y'all can totally do it. It's really easy if you just break it down and look at everything in like little bits and pieces. Don't just look at this as like an, oh my gosh, this massive thing. Break it down. So first off, realize like, look, this is one class. And then look, oh, we have 2 classes. So already that makes it less scary. If we were to just like cover up that much and just pay attention to class 2, all of a sudden it's not so bad. And then again, you notice it has 5 attributes. So this looks like a bunch of lines of stuff, and you realize that's really easy. Those are just this little bit you're writing here, you know, just that. And so just take it piece by piece and bit by bit, and don't get overwhelmed by it, because y'all can do it. I did want to go over briefly some of the things that I think y'all should put on your cheat sheets that I found helpful when I was learning, and that is a data types table. Make sure you have it like in order, so you know that like a byte is smaller than like a short, which is smaller than an int, smaller than a long. Have it in order, and have the list of how, like, what size number that they're able to hold, because I told you Professor Collier and Cooper are very, very serious about using the proper data types for those. So that's important. That helps a lot, because it's super easy to like forget them and mix them up and forget what size stuff they hold. I still don't remember that. I have to look it up if it's important to me. So the other thing I would add are how to write J-option panes. I would add the import statement, and I would write, J-option pane dot show message dialog and show input dialog. Because again, when you get to the quiz, you may be able to type those really easy now, but it really is easy to get like flustered once you're there and like a little nervous and be like, oh my gosh, I don't remember, and just doubt yourself. Be like, and doubt like, oh, was the O on J-option pane capitalized or was it lowercase? So if you just have them on your cheat sheet, it makes it way easier to just remember and take another little bit of stress away. I would have how to parse. We didn't. Oh yeah, we parsed once on here. We only had to parse once, but write this down. Write it down for integer. Write it down for byte. Write it down for float. Write it down for any of the ones that you can think of that you've covered. Because again, that's just one of those like you can take away a little bit of stress, day of when you're trying to do it. And the last thing I would do as well is typecasting. Professor Knighton didn't do it on this quiz, but because again he doesn't seem to care about data types as much. But Professor Collier will probably, I mean, like, can guarantee you'll have to do it on there. You're going to have to declare something probably as a byte. So know that if you're creating, I'll give you a quick example. Say, let's say total students enrolled, we knew it was going to be like 100 or less students. So we would actually, on Professor Collier's, we would say byte. And you have to put byte this, and remember, next to the number that you're assigning it, you have to put byte in parentheses. This is what I'm talking about when I say typecasting. I would write down all of that information too on your cheat sheet as well. Just again, they're pretty easy things to remember, but easy to like get flustered and forget day of. So just have them there as like an extra little tool. But that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. I really hope this helps. Please reach out with any questions if you have any, and happy studying.